All right. All right, welcome to your MFR release class. So today we're going to really be focusing on trying to release muscles and the fascia that surrounds them. So it can be nice to have 2 myofascial release balls. And then again, if you don't have those at home, lacrosse or tennis balls work great. I do have some blankets too for some support that just might be nice to place under the head or under the hips at some point along the way, as well as blocks if that's more suitable for you. But we're going to start with the feet. So we're actually going to start standing, and feel free to be near a wall if you want to assist with balance and not having to hold yourself up. But we're going to place one of those myofascial release balls right underneath the ball of your right foot with your heel still on the floor. And then from here, you're just going to start to shift your weight forward and back a little bit, just enough that you can start to feel enough tension or pressure to help release through the bottom of the foot. So you're in charge of how intense it feels, but it can be nice to maybe only go 60 or 70%. We're not really looking for like a deep tissue massage, but just to rehydrate and really nourish the tissues. So whenever you find like a good amount of pressure, go ahead and stay there. And we're just going to windshield wiper the foot side to side without lifting the heel off the floor. So we're just kind of gliding that ball back and forth right underneath the ball of the foot. And just bring some awareness to the toes. If they're really stiff and rigid, you kind of just let those soften and release. And try to maintain that even pressure as you glide back and forth. And if it moves away from you a little bit, just adjust as needed. And take a couple more breaths here, just pushing into that same spot. And then slowly release. And we're going to just flip-flop that. So now we're going to place the heel of the foot right on that ball. And then the ball of the foot's going to stay on the floor. And then we're doing that same thing. We're just going to kind of lean forward a little bit, playing around with how much body weight, how much pressure we want to push in, what feels good, what feels like too much, what feels like not enough. And then find that almost like Goldilocks amount. And then again, keeping the ball of the foot on the floor, we're just going to gently windshield wiper this heel side to side. And we really want to be kind of right on that meaty part of the heel. So I'm not on the arch of my foot, the ball's not sticking out behind the foot, but it's really just targeting that entire heel. Take a few more here, really releasing. And then we're going to move in one direction. So go ahead and bring the ball back up towards the ball of the foot. And we're going to lean forward as we let the ball roll all the way from the ball of the foot to the heel, and then pick up and just bring the ball back with you. So we're really trying to move with the fascia just in this one direction, trying to really stimulate that nourishment, that hydration to just move along the grain of the fascia and into that foot. And then if we have bigger balls like the size of lacrosse balls, it might be hitting the majority of the foot, but really try to imagine you can go down from one toe all the way to the heel, then the next toe all the way to the heel through all 5 toes. So we're really hitting every part. And if you have a smaller ball, one that's made specifically for feet and hands, you'll be a little bit more specific with that. But really go the entire length of the foot. And then we're just going to flip-flop that. So we're going to start at the heel and roll towards the ball of the foot, then pick it up and switch. And that same thing, we're trying to go down each foot, each toe, and get the entirety of that foot. Get the outside blade edge, get that inside arch edge. And then from there, just go ahead and stay. And now we're just going to scribble all along the bottom of the foot at a pace that feels accessible to you. And this one's my favorite. It should feel really good on that foot. And just make sure you're still breathing. And then go ahead and take a moment, pause, step off that ball, feet flat onto the floor, kind of about hips distance, and then just come into a gentle forward fold. Maybe you even grab opposite elbows, or maybe just the arms hang towards the floor, whatever feels more comfortable. And just notice It helps me to close my eyes, to bring my focus to the body and how it feels, just limiting distractions. And just see if you can't sense a difference between that right foot and that left foot. Maybe the right foot feels more open, more grounded, maybe even flatter. And take just a couple more breaths hanging out in this fold, just really bringing your awareness to how that shift has happened. What's the difference between the side you've worked and the side you haven't? And then from there, we're gently going to roll it up to stand. And now we're going to do that same series on the left side. So again, keeping the heel of the foot on the floor, ball of the foot onto that myofascial release ball, and then slowly just start to shift weight forward and back until you feel like you found a good spot with a little bit of pressure, and then hold, and then windshield wiper that side to side, using your heel on the floor as an anchor. And notice the toes, if they feel really stiff and rigid, can we just try to let them soften? And this should feel really nourishing, really hydrating. If you feel like any sharp pain or burning sensation, just back off a little bit so it's more nourishing. And keep bringing that awareness back to your breath and how that feels. And then all we're going to do is switch that. So now the ball of the foot is on the floor, the heel is on the ball. And again, play around with how much weight you'd like to push in. And once you find a good amount, keep the ball of the foot on the floor and just rock that ball right underneath the heel. And then we're going to do that one direction roll. So starting from the ball of the foot to the heel, just roll and then pick the foot up, bring the ball back with you. And again, if it helps, you can be near the wall. That might help with some balance. And just try to really hit every little edge, every corner, every part of this foot, from the ball all the way to the heel, getting those outside edges, the center, the inner edge, that arch of the foot. And just leaning your body weight with it, so you're putting a little bit of pressure each time you roll. And then after you feel like you've gotten through all 5 toes, maybe a little extra, start at the heel and then roll to the ball of the foot. And then my favorite, just scribble all along, just getting rid of any little bits of tension that might still be lingering in that foot, in that fascia, and really stimulate that hydration, that nourishment to the tissue. And then again, we'll do it just like we did before. Go ahead and take the feet off about hip distance apart and just come into a gentle forward fold. Feel free to bend the knees as much as feels comfortable, and just take a moment to notice. And then slowly release. We're going to come into a calf stretch before we actually do the myofascial release for the calves and the Achilles area. So for this one, you're going to want 2 of your yoga blocks. You're going to place one on its very lowest, flattest side. And we'll start with that right foot again. We're going to place that ball of the right foot right on this little edge of the block. And then my heel is on the floor. So the actual arch of my foot isn't connected with anything, but the ball is right there on that little edge and the heel is on the floor. Now the other block will be oriented on its highest setting. And we're just going to start to come like we're going into that fold. Place that high block on that low block and then push the hands and start to lean forward without picking your heel up off the floor. And you can lean forward as much as you need, but you'll start to feel a nice release through that whole back seam of the right leg, from the Achilles or right above the heel all the way up into the glute. Now, if you feel it kind of more just in the back of the knee, will probably be on that tendon. So not a whole lot, but just bend your right knee a little bit and then start to fold closer to your props. And hopefully that will take it out of being behind the knee and more into the actual muscles instead of that tendon. Try to soften the neck and the shoulders. Again, bring your awareness to the toes. Are they really stiff? Can we soften the toes? And take another breath here. And then slowly press yourself back up and release that right side. We're going to come right into the right side for the myofascial release. So for that, you're going to need one of your balls and one of your blocks, and meet me seated on the floor. So for this one, we're going to orient the block on its lowest setting and place one of those myofascial release balls right on that block. And we're going to really target right above this Achilles. So not in the meaty part of your calf, but right where it kind of hollows out before it turns into your heel. And we're going to place that right on that ball. And for here, we're just going to start pointing and flexing. And we might not have a whole lot of sensation. So if you need a little bit more, this free leg, your left leg, you can wrap it on top of the right and then just keep pointing and flexing that right foot. And what this should feel like is more like that ball is just kind of starting to go into the muscle. So really just more compression. And then go ahead and release the left leg if you added it. We're going to slide our prop up. So now we're in the meaty part of that calf muscle. And then again, take a moment and just point and flex. And this might be enough if the calves are really tight. And you might have to play around. Maybe it needs to come up a little bit, the ball, or maybe it needs to come down a little bit. But find a little trigger spot that feels really necessary in your body. And you'll know what that means as soon as you find it. And if you need a little bit more, again, you can always wrap that left leg on top, which will give you a little bit more body weight compressing into that ball. And that might have really changed it, and that might be too much. So feel free to back off if that became painful. Just really enjoy that compression. Again, it might be a little tender if the calves are tight, but it should feel more nourishing and hydrating than it should feel painful. So we're not really looking for like that deep, intense, like deep tissue massage. We're really wanting to rehydrate and nourish the tissue. And then slowly release. We're going to keep the myofascial release ball, but you can set your block off to the side. And we're going to place this ball right underneath the sit bone. So if you kind of lift onto the left side and feel underneath your glute, you'll feel this pokey bone right underneath the center of the glute. And we're going to place the ball right in front of that and where it connects with the hamstring. So as much as you can, straighten out that leg. Now, this might be a lot, so maybe we hang out back here with the hands on the floor, but the more we lean forward, the more it's going to be pressing up into that upper part of the hamstring. So really, we're kind of right at the bottom of the butt cheek where the hip and that leg come together. And we're not going to move around. We're just going to stay here and breathe. And just the more you lean forward, the more intense, because we're putting more body weight into it. And the more you keep yourself leaning back, the less body weight. And take one more deep breath here. And then all we're gonna do is pick up that ball and move it down an inch or two. So if I could go through my leg, I would now be right at that upper part of the hamstring, not in the middle. So not right here in that meaty part. So still up a little bit. And then again, the hands back, or we can start to fold forward if that feels accessible to us. If the hamstrings are really tight, that might be a little too much. So just listen to your body and how you want to take it. And then just bring that focus right back to your breathing. And then again, all we're going to do is just move it down an inch or two. So picking that ball up and then moving it down an inch or two. So I'm not behind the knee, I'm avoiding the knee. So I'm up just a little bit from the knee. And then again, fold forward or stay lifted, whatever feels more accessible to you. And then slowly release. You can set your myofascial release ball off to the side and then take a moment. If you've got flesh underneath your sits bones, feel free to remove it from underneath of you. Take a nice big breath as you reach up. And then exhale, fold forward as much as you can. Maybe we don't grab the feet, maybe we grab the ankles or the calves, or maybe behind the knees or the hamstrings. But just notice how that right back leg feels from the heel towards the glute, that back seam of the leg, and how it feels different from the left. Maybe even feels longer, physically longer. Just anything you notice between the two sides. And then slowly release, and we're going to come back up to standing and move on to the left side. So again, once you come all the way up, you're going to want two of those blocks. One's going to be oriented on its very lowest setting, moving into the left leg. So the ball of that left foot is right on that edge of the block. The heel is on the floor. Take a nice big breath in. And then with that other block oriented on its tallest setting, we're going to place it right in front of the toes and then push into the block. From here, we're slowly going to lean forward as much as we can before the heel has to come up off the floor. So that might be not to be a whole lot. And then again, just notice if you feel it behind the kneecap, bend your knee a little bit. And once you're oriented as far forward as you can go, then start to fold. And really feel that stretch up that back seam of the leg. And with every exhale, just try to soften a little bit more, really just enjoying this stretch. And press yourself up and slowly release. You can set one of those blocks off to the side, grab one of your myofascial release balls, and we'll come back to having a seat on the floor. So again, we're going to be right below the meaty part of that calf, right where the leg starts to kind of hollow off, and just point and flex. Now again, just notice if there's not a whole lot of sensation, that still might feel really good and might be nourishing, so maybe that's where you stay. But if you want a little bit more, you can always wrap that other leg around and just get a little bit more body weight there. And focus on that breath and how that feels. And then slowly release, and we're just going to slide the props up. So now we're right in the meaty part of the calf, and you might need to come down a little bit or up a little bit, play around with the placement that feels the most nourishing for you. And then again, just point and flex the foot once you find your little trigger spot. And if you need more, you can always wrap that right leg on top of the left leg and just add in some more body weight. Oh, that feels really, really tender. And take another breath here and then slowly release. Go ahead and set your block off to the side, but grab that myofascial release ball. And again, feel around for your actual sit bone. And we're going to place the ball right in front of that sit bone and then extend that leg. So a lot of us have that asymmetry. One side can be tighter than the other. So you might not be able to go as far on one side versus the other, but just try to fold a little bit and just see how it feels. And then if you need to, you can always back off. And then bring that awareness back to your breath. And we really just want to focus on softening the rest of the body and being really passive here, letting the compression of that ball into the tissues to really release that. And take another breath here. And then we're just going to move that ball down an inch or two. Whew, and then again, fold forward. And just notice if it causes you to really stiffen up and be rigid, we might want to back off just a little bit. If it causes the breath to feel restricted, the same thing. Just keep that nice natural ebb and flow of the breath, that softening of the rest of the body. And really just tap into how that feels. Let this be almost like a journaling workout. You can really tap into how your body's feeling, what is coming up, what's rising, what's shifting and changing. And then again, move that ball down just a couple inches. So not behind the knee, but right above the knee. And then again, find that gentle fold forward. And then slowly release. And we'll take one of those forward folds again. So inhale, reach the arms up. Feel free to move the flesh from underneath the sit bones if that feels more comfortable. And then fold yourself forward. And then slowly release up. So we're going to move into the hips. We're going to start with the glute med. So that side of that hip. So for this one, I'm going to invite you to use both of your myofascial release balls. Now you can feel free to stay seated. We're actually going to be ending up laying on one side of our body. So you don't have to come up with me. I just want to show you where we're going. So we're going to find your ASIS. So this bony hip that sticks out, you can feel around for it and you can actually find that front hip bone. We're going to have the balls one on top of the other. So just oriented like this. And we're going to place it right outside of that on the side of the body. So we're moving into that glute med. So feel free to start on the right side if that feels comfortable, or start on the left side. I like to actually lay down first and then kind of just lift my hips up. But however you want to get into that, feel around for that front hip bone and then place the balls right behind it laying down. Now this one can be really tender for a lot of us. So at first you might be like, oh my goodness. So just try to extend that leg that has the balls on it and then soften as much as you can. The tissue and the muscle will soften. But if we're not used to doing this, and if we sit a lot throughout the day, the glute med can get really tight and it has a difficult time lengthening and stretching and opening up. So inviting it to do this can be a little tender. So just focus on the breath, focus on softening as much as you can. And just take some nice deep breaths. And if being propped up on the forearm doesn't feel good, feel free to lay completely on your side body. Now, rather than thinking lifting up to roll, I want you just to think of gliding the flesh back as you roll back just an inch or maybe 2 inches. So we're still in that exact same spot, but now we're just a little bit behind where we just were, still right in that glute med. And keep focusing on that breath and how it feels. And then that same thing. So not lifting up, but gliding the tissue back as you come back about another inch. We're gonna do that just one more time. So again, just gliding the tissue back, rolling about 1 more inch. So we're almost kind of bumped right up against that sacrum tailbone area. We're kind of more now in the meaty part of the glutes. And this might feel better. Sometimes it feels really good to massage the glutes. And then slowly release yourself off, set the balls off to the side just for a moment and lay all the way down onto your back in this supine position. And take a moment, again, I invite you just to close the eyes. That just helps to limit the distractions so you can really bring your awareness inside the body. And just notice how that right hip and glute feels versus the left. Maybe you even feel a little cockeyed because the right hip maybe feels longer and more open and that left hip still feels tight and rigid. Just whatever you notice. And it's okay if you don't even notice anything. The more you keep practicing and being really introspective, looking in, that proprioception, that body awareness will start to become more readily available. But that does take some practice. And then whenever you're ready, we're just going to switch over to the other side. So I'm going to flip around. Feel free just to roll over though, and you can have your back towards me, but I want to flip around so I don't have my back to you. We're going to do that same thing. So finding that ASIS on our left side, and then placing the balls right behind it, laying onto our side. And we'll take several rounds of breath here, just trying to encourage the tissue to soften as the balls compress and push into that tissue. And then again, without lifting up, just think of gliding the tissue back an inch. The balls will roll with you. And then come back another inch. And then that last little bit, so we're almost right next to that sacrum and we're really in the meaty part of the glute. And then go ahead and release. You can grab those balls and place them off to the side and take a moment laying flat. And again, just notice how it feels, what shifted. And then we're gonna finish with the quadriceps before we move into the upper body. So we're gonna start with the balls really right next to the ASIS. So as you just lay here on your back for a minute, feel around for those bony hip protrusions, your anterior superior iliacus spine. So all that is that ASIS, that bony front hip. And we're gonna place the balls right inside of that. So I'll show you kneeling. You find those little bony hip protrusions and we're going to come just inside of that. So I'm not down here on the pubic bone or in the pelvic region, but really still in the hips. So we're going to go from here. We're going to glide down to where the leg and the hip meet. We're going to end up in the middle of the quadricep and then right above the knee. So it's going to stay in the same line and we're just going to move down the leg. So I'll invite you to come onto your belly and maybe leave some space to move forward. That way you don't have to pick up, but you can always just pick the balls up and move them. Never feel like you have to roll with them, but feel around for the ASIS, place the balls right in between that or right next to it towards the midline of your body. Maybe take a moment on the forearms in this almost like Sphinx-like shape and just try to breathe into where the balls are. So really deep into the low abdomen. And then if it feels okay and accessible, feel free to come all the way down. Now this will take away some of that sensation. So if you don't feel a lot here and the hips are really tight and you want to really focus on them, feel free to come right back up onto the forearms. But it might also be nice to bend the knees. And as you breathe into where the balls are compressing, the inhale should make them feel kind of like they're going into the body. And the exhale, you'll feel that little bit of softening. Mm. Now you can feel free to just hike your hips up and place the balls right where the hip and the leg come together, or come back up onto the forearms, flex the feet and roll yourself forward until the balls are right where that leg and that hip come together. And if that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to you, it's just right here beneath where we just were. And if they kind of slid inwards and they feel like they're more towards the pubic bone, feel free again to just lift your hips up and place the balls where you would like them. Now, the quads tend to be a pretty tight spot for the majority of us. We're pretty quad dominant. We do a lot of quad exercises, and we normally have them be the stronger of the leg muscles. So if it gets really intense, feel free just to lay onto the belly and stay still, not adding in any movement. But one more time, we're going to move down a couple of inches so we're more mid quadricep. And again, if the rolling doesn't work for you, hike those hips up, place the balls in the middle of the thigh, and then come back up onto the forearms. Now, this might be enough, and this is where you want to stay. But if it feels okay, maybe you start to bend and straighten the legs. And then that might be a little too much. So maybe you come back to the just staying still, just notice how it feels. And we want a little bit of sensation, but not pain or sharp. And if you were moving, coming back into that stillness. And we're going to finish with the balls kind of just a couple inches above the knee. So however you want to get there, you can reach back and place them, or you can roll forward. Again, maybe we bend and straighten the legs. Maybe we don't. Just notice how it feels. Focus on your breath. The closer we get to the knee, it tends to be a little bit more intense. So really just notice how it feels for you and then take any adjustments that you need. And then from here, slowly start to peel yourself off as you walk the arms back towards the legs. And then just take a seat for a moment. And again, just notice how the front tops of those legs feel. And then we're gonna finish with the back. So go ahead and place one of your blocks off to the side, just so it's gonna be in arm's reach. And I'll show you where we're gonna be placing the balls at first. So they're gonna be right in the trap. So if you were to reach around for the shoulders and kind of pinch that area, we're gonna place that big chunk of meat, this area right in here. Or if you could draw a line from the collarbone out the backside, that's exactly where we're gonna want the balls, right here in that meaty part of the traps, the upper shoulders. So go ahead and roll over onto your back if you were still on your belly. And you can place them and lay onto the balls if that makes sense for you. Or I like to just roll onto one side, placing one ball and then doing the same on the other side. Now this might be enough, and this is where we want to stay. So if this feels really good, feel free to just stay as you are. But if you want just a little bit more, it can be nice to orient your block on its lowest setting and then slide that underneath your tailbone and sacrum, which just pushes a little bit more body weight into this compression, which can help release some tension through the neck and the upper shoulders. And then once you find yourself situated with your props underneath of you, bring that awareness back to your breath. Notice if you're kind of tensing up somewhere around, maybe the jaw or the arms are really, and the hands are clenched and the arms are rigid. Can we soften all of that up? This one tends to be a crowd pleaser, so I hope you're enjoying it. This one can feel really, really nice. And all we're going to do is slowly move down the back. So without moving yet, I just want to verbally let you know where we're going. We're going to be gliding the balls down so they land right in the middle of the shoulder blades. So they're going to be right along the spine. So we're not pushing on any bones. But imagine if you could draw a line straight through the center of your chest, out your back. That's where we're going to land. So if you did have a block underneath of you, go ahead and remove it. Keep it close by though, because this one can be nice to place it behind the head. And then we're going to lift our hips up, lift the head up, and just roll down an inch or two. And the balls should kind of roll with us. And then they land right in the shoulder blades. And then place that block still on its lowest setting right behind the head. And it should feel kind of like an opening through the chest. The chest feels lifted, like an upper back bend. And take a couple of breaths here. Again, just notice if you're tense through the neck or the jaw. Can you let that soften? If you're pressing your arms into the earth, can we let that soften? And really just allow gravity to do the work for us here. And just notice any little shift. If it starts and it's intense, do you notice that moment where it starts to become more accessible, maybe even enjoyable? And then again, without changing anything, I just want to let you know we're going again. We're going to come down a couple more inches. So for ladies, it's going to be kind of right at the bottom of your sports bra line, but just right underneath the scapula or the shoulder blades is where we're heading. So we won't really need a block from here on out. So feel free to move the block. You can get into this a couple ways. Again, you can lift the hips and roll and then lower down. Or if you have the shoulder range of motion, you can place the balls underneath the bottom of that scapula. So whichever of those two transitions feels the most accessible to you. And it should feel like it's kind of right in the center of your back. And those balls are just right along the spine. They're not touching the spine, but they're right next to it. And you have all these muscles in your back, your erector muscles that run from your low back to your neck, really broad. You got your deep muscle right along the spine, the multifidus. And then the ones in between each vertebra, the rotators. So just really trying to relax and let all of these muscles get that nourishment and that hydration that they're craving. We have two more spots. The next one's going to be at the bottom of the rib cage. So for this one, I like to actually place the balls there, but feel free again to just keep rolling if that's been accessible to you. Kind of losing that space. So, but still right next to the spine, I like to bridge my hips up. You can feel where that rib cage ends. And we're going to place the balls right there. So right where the thoracic or the mid back starts to connect with the lumbar or the low back region. And again, we're right up against the spine, but not on it. and we've cleared the rib cage. So we're right beneath the bottom of that rib cage. And then we're going to end in the low back. So again, just press the feet to lift the hips, bring the balls down to that natural curve of your lumbar spine, your low back, that natural lordotic curve, and place the balls anywhere in that low back region that feels really good. Maybe you move them out a little bit more laterally. Maybe they stay right along the spine if that feels good. And this is where we're going to finish. So take several deep breaths here. Just really trying to release that low back, which can get really tender for a lot of us. Think how almost, although it's a really strong system, that low back and your neck specifically, so lumbar and cervical spine, they don't have the same support as your sacrum and your thoracic, your mid back. Your mid back has this entire rib cage holding it together. Your sacrum has your hips, but the low back and the cervical are kind of just free. So it makes a lot of sense why the majority of us, when we have back pain, it ends being in the low back, or we have neck pain with tension, headaches, because they're really unsupported as far as the rest of the body goes. So if you do focus on any area, I suggest those two for your therapy, as they can be really nourishing and they need a lot of love and support, because we also demand a lot from the low back and the neck. We're always moving in all these different directions. So take one more deep breath here. And then whenever you're ready, just lift up enough that you can pull those balls out from underneath of you, laying flat onto the earth, and find just this gentle windshield wipering of your sacrum, that muscle around the tailbone, side to side. So it's not huge. The knees aren't falling all the way over. We just kind of feel that gentle massaging of that sacrum. And then whenever it feels okay, just let them fall to one side and roll onto that side of your body. And then using your top arm as a support, press yourself up to have a comfortable seat. And I hope your body feels much more hydrated and nourished after this MFR session. Continue to do this every day. And if you don't have time for the whole body, whatever spots are really tender where you noticed your trigger spots, keep practicing those spots and really nourish and hydrate those tissues and all of the surrounding areas. Until next time, be well.